one cannot help it but to reflect and contemplate on what the media has been lately focusing on. The issues of hijab related to the story that has taken place in Iran is becoming the headline. There's much talk about the protests that are taking place by young people in Iran, and there is much talk about the issue of hijab. And today I'm not going to be talking about the political agenda of why media is focusing right now and whether it is doing the right job or the wrong job. This is irrelevant to me, as I'm not a political scientist. What concerns me the most is how media is, whether directly or indirectly, or whether being aware or not being aware, have an agenda or without an agenda, is causing damage to us as a community living in Western societies. After all, we know that media is a very powerful tool. And I remember back in time in the first Gulf War, when the American people were consulted whether they should be going to war or not, majority were saying, why should we bother to go to a war we do not have an interest in as an average American. And it took only 1 week of hard work of CNN to convince the majority of the people in the country that yes, we should be going to war. And we wonder nowadays if there is a hidden agenda that is being used by media for a political reason in this matter. As I said again, this is irrelevant to me. What I'm going to be focusing on is primarily how the exploring of hijab is causing damage to us as a community. Two things that we need to talk about: the impact of this on our children, our daughters, and the impact of this on the society in which we're living in. The too much talk about hijab without keeping in mind the perspective of the hijab, practice as part of the Islamic faith, that would be sending a wrong message that would make hijabis, or those who wear hijab, look as different than the rest of the society, would be seen as odd individuals, as odd females who are practicing, who are being pushed to wear the hijab in their life. And at the same time, it could be providing a justification and an ammunition to the racist and bigots who have an agenda and hatred against Islam. Islamophobia is real. And this masjid speaks for it, because we've suffered from it enough in this masjid. So we say to the media, change your tone, change the perspective in which you present your facts. We appreciate the fact that you're trying to bring to our awareness the global issues that are happening around us, but do not take things out of context. If you're going to be talking about astronomy, you be consulting with astronomists. If you want to talk about what goes on in the oceans, you speak to scientists. If you want to talk about Islam and the practice of Muslims, talk to the imams. Talk to the sources. Do not take things out of the contexts. Do not present false facts about Muslims and the practices of Muslims and about the faith of Islam, because it touches us directly. We are the one who will be affected by your negative presentation to hijab and to Islam and Muslims. As I said again, I have no interest in what goes on in Iran. I am not a fan or supporter or against the political regime that is in that country. All that concerns me as a person who's living in Western societies is what goes on in media that can affect me directly. And before coming to here, I was preparing for the khutbah and going online to look for reputable, authentic news outlets in Canada to get to know what is happening and what's being represented about hijab and Islam and Muslims. And I come across a website that is kids, CBC for kids, and I was delighted to see that CBC, the Canadian broadcast company which represents Canada, is taking the initiative to represent to have a website that speaks to children. But I was appalled and I was disappointed to the way that the representation of the facts about hijab and Islam and Muslim is done by them. Again, they need to put things into the right perspective. They need to consult with the expertise of Islam, the sources of Islam, and present that in the right context. You cannot look about hijab and the practice of Muslim from Western perspective. That's irrelevant. You need to look into hijab and Islam from the lenses of Muslims themselves. And that's where you need to reevaluate things and present them the right way. The consequences of that, as I said again, is going to be that this is going to fuel Islamophobia and cause more harm to us as a community living in predominantly Western society or non-Muslim environment. This also would have a negative impact on our females, whether they are children or adults. Talk about there's an impact on the teens, the females, our daughters, our sisters, who are trying and struggling to maintain, to represent their identity as Muslimin living in Western societies. You don't know what are the challenges that goes in the mind of a single teen female who's trying to put the hijab on and walk outside her home. You don't know what challenges she's going through, struggling between trying to represent herself as a Muslimah. She loves her faith. She loves to practice her faith, and between the challenges that are imposed on her from the environment around her. You're not doing a good job to individuals like these. You're not doing an excellent job in representing the faith. Rather, you're causing more harm and damage to the psychology of these teen females who are trying to live their life as individuals who love their faith. Be mindful of that. Be mindful of that and try to change the narrative and the perspective of your presentation to Islam and Muslims. When a female chooses to wear hijab in public, that's her personal choice. That's what she believes in as being a follower of the faith of the deen of Islam. You need to respect that, and you need to respect her choice, and you need to rather encourage her, and if not, provide the safe environment for her to be able to practice her faith without being subjugated to racism and discriminations and challenges and phobia. That's what we need to be mindful about and talk about, because that is what is relevant to us. We're not really, it's irrelevant for me to talk about what goes on in Iran and what goes in the regime and whether it is a good or corrupt. That's irrelevant to me. I have no interest in talking about that. What I'm talking about is hijab and my own children and my own sisters who are trying to practice their faith. There is a big challenge for a sister to be walking in the street and wearing her hijab. She's always monitoring her back. She's always watching her back and trying to see if someone could be coming from behind her to attack her, which happened many times and several occasions in different parts of the country. And we know that this is a fact. This is true. What we need is to provide more stability and to provide more information that would help different racial background and different faith background communities to be able to feel safe, belonging to the mosaic of the fabric of the Canadian society, so they're able to practice their own faith without being challenged or feeling threatened or feeling unsafe. That's what we care about. Another important issue is we need to spend some time to talk about this to our own females, to our own children, because right now the negative representation of Islam is sending a very clear, a very strong, a very negative message about Islam and Muslims and their practices. When Islam, in reality, have come to provide the values and the principles that would honor women in their life. Look into how people were living in Jahiliyyah before Islam, whether it is in the Arabian Peninsula or in the surrounding areas at that time between the two empires, the Persian and the Roman Empire. The value of women at that time was not there. Women were not considered as human beings, they were considered as commodities. وَإِذَا بُشِّرَ أَحَدُهُمَا بِمَا ضَرَبَ لِلرَّحْمَنِ مَثَلًا ظَلَّ وَجْهُهُ مُسْوَدًّا وَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ يتوارى من القوم من سوء ما بشر به أيدسه في التراب أم يدسه أيقره على هون أم يدسه في التراب. Allah Azza wa talked about this and captured for us an image to what goes in the mind of individuals when they're being given a news about the birth of a female child for them. And Allah Azza wa said, بِمَا ضَرَبَ لِلرَّحْمَنِ مَثَلًا. They used to call the malaika as the females of Ar-Rahman, and then eventually they're ashamed of the females. Should he bury her underground, or should he shunting away and hide away from people around him because he's not given a good news? This was the mentality of people in the old time before Islam. Islam after that come to honor women. ووصينا الإنسان بوالديه حملته أمه كرها على كره ووصينا الإنسان بوالديه إحسانا حملته أمه كرها على كره وحمله فصاله في عامين نشكر لي ولوالديك إلي المصير. Allah Azza wa Jal, gave us an honorable understanding to who women are. They are our mothers, the one whom Allah Azza wa Jal have honored in the Quran and put their status after worshipping Allah. And the Prophet ﷺ indicated to us that al-jannah tahta aqdam al-ummahat, underneath the feet of mothers. These are the women that have brought us to life, and we need to honor them, unlike what they used to practice of Jahiliyyah before Islam. Islam have put women in the right perspective and honored them as daughters as well. من على جاريتين فما فوق. Whoever looks after 2 daughters and more, he will be the companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in al-Jannah. And Islam have also respected the right of women. يوصيكم الله في أولادكم للذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين. Allah Azza wa Jal is asking you to be kind and mindful and aware of the rights of your children, both male and female. And after the end of the ayah that speaks about inheritance, تلك حدود الله وما يطع الله ورسوله يدخله جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار ذلك الفوز العظيم ومن يعص الله ورسوله يدخله نارا خالدا فيها وله عذاب مهين. Quite the opposite to those who disobey the rules of inheritance and ignore the rights of females in the family will be subjugated to a hellfire والعياذ بالله in the hereafter with humiliated punishment. This is how Islam looked into women and man and male and female, honored both sides, respected both sides, and gave responsibilities to both sides, and held both sides accountable for their own responsibilities in life. المؤمنون والمؤمنات بعضهم أولياء بعض أني لا أضيع عمل عامل منكم من ذكر أو أنثى. Allah Azza wa Jal wants us to be mindful that the other half of ourselves is female. And both male and female complete each other in life. So these are values that we need to plant in the minds and the hearts of our children, especially the females. Take the time to sit with the females in your possession, whether they are young sisters or young daughters. Talk to them. See what goes on in their life. Are they subjugated to Islamophobia, to racism, to discrimination as they go to school, as they walk in the streets? Let them know that you're behind them. Let them know that we appreciate the fact that they are representatives of the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. When males walk in the street, they are not being recognized as Muslims, but when sisters walk into the streets with their heads up with the hijab, they are true representation to the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. Let them know they are following the footsteps of Maryam alayhi salam. وَإِذْ قَالَتِ الْمَلَائِكَةُ يَا مَرْيَمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَاكِ وَطَهَّرَكِ وَاصْطَفَاكِ عَلَى نِسَاءِ الْعَالَمِينَ يَا مَرْيَمْ اقْنُتِي لِرَبِّكِ وَاسْجُدِي وَارْكَعِي مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ. Let them know that they are following the footsteps of Aisha radiallahu anha, and Asma bint Abi Bakr radiallahu anha, and Sumayya radiallahu anha, and the Sahabiyat who have struggled a lot in the early stages of da'wah to the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, and they have paved the road for Islam to be present to us right now. They were icon as a result of their sacrifice, and the females, the sisters who are living in Western societies are going to be, inshallah, the role model to those who will be coming after them. Contrast how Islam and Muslims are living right now compared to 30 years or 40 years from before. hijab was not a norm. Now you walk into the streets and you see how hijab is imposing itself on the streets of the Western societies. And we're not causing any threats. We're just bringing the teachings of the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, and we're giving the chance for those who would love to know what the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal is all about to come and learn it and see what Islam represents. Islam wants us to look at women as being respectable entity, not as a model of sale and a model of that would be represented the image body of the woman. Islam asks the hijab, يا أيها النبي قل لنسائك وبناتك ونساء المسلمين يدنين عليهن من جلابيبهن. Allah Azza wa Jal asked the Prophet ﷺ to encourage his own female wives and to encourage his children and to encourage the women of the society to wear the hijab. Why? Hijab is a representation and a symbol of iffa and tahara and purity. The females are not being looked at as a commodity, but rather as being respected for whatever values she carries, whatever skills and professions she is working within as a professional individual in the society in which she is living in. She's being honored and respected for the role she plays, whether as a mother, or as a wife, or as a daughter, or as a sister, or as a teacher, or as a doctor, or as whatever profession she represents. She's being respected for the skills she represents, not because of the body image she's trying to represent to the public for free. That's what we need to explain to our children, especially for our daughters and sisters who are going through very difficult challenges, and especially nowadays as this open kind of world that has been open and causing so much damage. And we say to media, please do not cause more damage, but rather be in the side of representing and presenting Islam in the right way. وأقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه لا فوز المستغفرين. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا وسيئات اعمالنا من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. ان الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا ايها الذين امنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى ال سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا ابراهيم وعلى ال سيدنا ابراهيم وبارك اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى ال سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا ابراهيم في العالمين انك حميد مجيد. اللهم انا عبيدك ابناء عبيدك ابناء امائك نواصينا يا رب بيدك ماض يا رب فينا حكمك عدل فينا قضاؤك. نسالك اللهم بكل اسم هو لك سميت به نفسك انزلته في كتابك وعلمته أحدا من خلقك أو استأثرت به في علم الغيب عندك بأن تجعل القرآن العظيم ربيع قلوبنا يا رب. اللهم اجعله جلاء لهمومنا وأحزاننا يا أرحم الراحمين. ربي أوزعني أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه وأصلح لي في ذريتي إني تبت إليك وإنني مسلمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وأقم الصلاة. الله